Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this quick session. So I'm here with Cameron McDonald, Carrie Fu, and Simon Rogerson from Atkins, and I'm Eduardo Lazarotto from Bentley. So I'll pass it on to you guys for introductions and to tell us a little bit more about what Atkins is working on at the moment.
Great, thank you, Eduardo, and thanks for the opportunity to be part of this webinar. My name is Cameron McDonald. I've worked for Atkins for more than 20 years, and currently I head up the transport planning team in Australia, based in our Melbourne office. And as Eduardo has said, I'm joined today by two of my Melbourne-based colleagues, Carrie Fu and Simon Rogerson, and I think I'll bring them in to answer any tricky Q&A questions at the end of the session, but they can introduce themselves now.
Hi there, I'm Simon Rogerson. I've been with Atkins for over 6 years now, doing pedestrian modelling and transport planning. Previously based in Hong Kong, working on metro projects in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East, and now part of the Melbourne team in Australia.
Hello everyone, it's Carrie Fu here, and my experience is very much similar to Simon's. I've been working for Atkins Hong Kong for about 5 years, and then transferred to the Atkins Australian office last year. And I've been majorly working with lots of metro projects in Hong Kong, Singapore, and the Middle East. So have been a long user for Legion and Bentley for a long time. Thanks for having me today.
Let's jump to the agenda. So to provide some background to the discussion today, we will briefly describe the work that Atkins has been undertaking over the past few weeks around preparing guidance for COVID-19 recovery. And we'll describe some of the projects that we've been working on recently, and we will use two projects in particular to provide a backdrop to a discussion around where we think pedestrian modelling might fit in to this recovery phase. And as you see there'll be some time at the end for some Q&A. So just to provide some context, it was nearly 3 years ago now that Atkins became a member of the SNC Lavalin Group, and this joining of forces brought together a leading engineering and construction group and one of the world's most respected engineering, design and project management consultancies. And it's the Atkins side of the business that houses our planning capability, and in particular where our pedestrian modelling capability sits. We have a long-standing relationship with Legion that began, in my memory, way back in the early 2000s when Legion sent two staff out to Hong Kong to help Atkins design the stations for the Sha Tin to Central Link, as it was then conceived. And since then, we have successfully used Legion software to develop the designs of metro stations, of airports, stadia, and public realm spaces all around the world. So in recent weeks, the group right across our global sectors of Europe, the Middle East, Asia Pacific, and North America have been collaborating with a view to helping our clients chart their way through these times, and some of this work has resulted in advice to governments around creating safer public places through the integration of social distancing. We have recently supported the UK government with a COVID-19 safer public place guidance, where we have recognised a staged process of reopening, recovering and reimagining urban centres with social distancing in mind. And although every urban environment is unique, there are typical issues that need to be addressed around the need to socially distance, to implement safety and security measures, and to regulate the impact of patronage on public transport and public gatherings. And so too, there are a range of typical solutions that can be introduced into urban areas to help temporarily facilitate social distancing. And where we think simulation modelling will play a role is in the delivery of solutions that consider management of spaces through movement and supervision. So focusing on the railway station in this example here, we have outlined a range of measures for consideration, including the provision of hand sanitisers, health monitoring through thermal imaging, one-way circulatory flows to minimise face-to-face contact, and seat allocation as a means of social distancing. Now, it's interesting to note that here in Melbourne, we are still being strongly encouraged to remain working from home. And the result is that we are seeing trains running at only about 20% capacity. So for the time being, social distancing is relatively easy to both adhere to and to administer. But there is no doubt that pressure is mounting to start getting things back to normal. But at the same time, we can expect that as things do, that social distancing on public transport will be policed in some way. The government here has been shown to be extremely risk averse, actually. And whereas in some countries, public transport usage has returned with only the wearing of masks as a preventative measure, we can expect stricter policies here, I would think. So now a few examples of recent railway projects that we have undertaken using Legion software as a means of developing and optimising station layouts and to maximise customer experience. Starting with Flinders Street Station here in Melbourne, Burj Khalifa Station in Dubai, Hong Hum Station in Hong Kong, the Gold Line stations in Doha, no fewer than 24 stations for lines 4, 5 and 6 for Riyadh Metro in Saudi, and new stations for extensions to the green and red lines in Dubai. Now I'm going to just set a simulation video running here, a video of what I would call a typical simulation, a pre-COVID-19 simulation depicting peak hour passenger behaviours at ticket gate lines, escalator and stair landings, and within lift queuing zones. And the question, of course, now is, well, how are these behaviours likely to change? And will indeed people be travelling in these sort of volumes? Now, as human beings, we are not innately programmed to socially distance. However, people are clearly altering their behaviours in public spaces due to the current threat. Now, if a serum is developed and distributed anytime soon, and of course some are suggesting that it won't be anytime soon, then Legion will have an opportunity to observe these new behaviours and develop and calibrate a COVID-19 profile within the model. But in the meantime, I still see some useful applications of the model, although perhaps some more useful than others. The analysis of proximity breaches and the visualization of clashes of proximity circles is probably more of academic interest than practical use, but it does nonetheless reveal the extent to which normal behavior would be putting people at risk. But it's really the simulation of the use of waiting, circulation and queuing zones with entities responding directly to visual cues for social distancing, such as stickers on a floor, that is certainly useful in the planning of temporary queuing arrangements, and of course in determining the actual station capacities on the basis of throughput dictated by distancing protocols. So I'm just going to run the video again, and a few things spring to my mind. The first of which is the use of lifts. Now we know that in Dubai, the metro stations there are restricted now to only 2 persons at a time. And this is something that, of course, is easily programmable in the model. And again, should the ticket gate entries or indeed the platforms themselves be marked with distancing stickers, then strict adherence to such spacings can be programmed within the model and the capacity impacts determined there as well. Moving away from railway stations and considering stadia, we did some work last year here in Melbourne shaping an upgrade of Marvel Stadium. which hosts many Australian rules footballs games during the football season. Now the season here is set to restart actually next week, but without crowds, of course. So you can bet, however, that the AFL, the Football League here, is exploring means of bringing crowds back as soon as they can. And that will involve considerable social distancing effort, given the current mood of our government. So playing the video of an ingress simulation shown here, a number of measures come to mind, including the allocation of seating to put some distance between seated patrons, which is very easy to model, but should also consider a range of scenarios around seat allocation, including family groups sitting together as appropriate, as this will have the effect of increasing the overall capacity of the stadium. Possibly also the location of temperature checks on arrival is something, again, that can be programmed to inform the planning and the number of such checkpoints and in what arrangement they should be laid out. And finally, I think there needs to be some consideration given especially to egress, as patrons may not be inclined to distance themselves, especially if it's cold or if their team has lost the game and they're keen to get home in a hurry. So spreading out their rate of departure, literally flattening the departure curve by keeping patrons at F&B or other concessions will be an important consideration. And of course, again, this can be demonstrated by the existing model.
Okay, wow. Thank you very much, Cameron, for the videos and the examples that you have shown. They look very good, and I'm glad, of course, to see that you guys have been using Legion for such a long time in so many ways. So if it's okay,
we're dedicated followers of fashion.
yes, indeed. So if it's okay, can we do a bit of a Q&A session, and if I can ask a few questions maybe about how are you guys working at the moment and some of the projects, would that be okay?
Sure, please. I'd like to bring Carrie and Simon in as appropriate, Eduardo. I've done enough talking.
Great. So I think one of the questions, I think you touched a little bit on those, is how do you see simulation tools evolving in the future? And of course, not only people movement like Legion, but mobility in general.
Are you guys there?
We were like waiting for you to give you a start. That's all right. I'll take it over first.
Over to you.
Sorry for the sorry for the silence. I think in general, from what I can see for both the pedestrians or vehicle-based models, I myself, or I could gather some thoughts from the client would be they might seeking something to be more real-time focused and big data driven, and also given to how quickly that this pandemic thing developed over the last 1 or 2 months, I guess the client and myself might seeking to receive more responsive and quickly react to either the temporary design change or operational change, and how we as modelers can quickly reflect that in our model and deliver something that's like in response to the quickly changed environment. Over to you, Simon.
Yeah, I'd agree with those points. I'd just also add that I see simulation models evolving to incorporate additional data sources so we can better replicate the behaviors that we're either seeing today or anticipating in the near future. I think one of the issues that we might be foreseeing now with the COVID situation is we don't necessarily have the data that we need to model the behaviors realistically. So working more closely with data providers, whether that be mobile phone data or CCTV or Wi-Fi data, and how we can incorporate that type of data into our pedestrian models, whether it be through adjusting parameters in the models or other means, new tools that are incorporated, so we can more accurately show crowding situations or social distancing measures that would be put in place.
Yes,
Great.
perhaps add to that, Eduardo?
Sure.
We're seeing a big change in focus at the moment, because up until recent times, a lot of simulation modelling was applied to get the most out of an asset in terms of throughput and capacity, although obviously with passenger comfort in mind. But now, of course, things have been turned on their head somewhat, and it's quite likely that in the foreseeable future we won't be dealing with passenger volumes to the same extent. It'll be more about processing passengers again with capacity in mind, but making the most of capacity given the constraints that social distancing will place upon throughput.
Great, thank you, guys. So you also mentioned, Cameron, a few of the questions that we asked today to models, or that we have been asking over the years. So do you guys have some insight on some of the future questions that we will be asking models, and what types of scenarios will we be modeling in the future?
Carrie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think the first question, or the hottest question pop up in my head is, can you model the social distancing? That might be like the most common asked question recently. But more to that will be, what are the likely impact of the social distancing to the station operation and then to the station design, in terms of how we incorporate this experience into our future station design? And then also, it's about how we can implement the social distancing measures and then monitor the performance in our model to reflect to the real life situation. So those are some questions that I think clients are likely to raise in the coming modeling world. And over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Carrie. I think to add to those points that you made, I think there's going to be questions asked about how we can reimagine assets. So in the future, they are perhaps more resilient to these type of events. So that's much more long-term future planning to get the most out of the assets, or perhaps redesign or repurpose where possible. And I also think perhaps not the type of questions, but we might be getting new questions. So the typical teams that we work with from the client side, there might be new teams that are suddenly interested in the pedestrian planning space, given all the recent events, who will add additional questions that perhaps the usual clients and ourselves don't even think to ask right at this moment in time. And that could lead to whole new areas of focus that we're currently not aware of in the pedestrian planning space.
Great. So picking up a little bit on this point of resilience that you mentioned, Simon. So of course, out of the different components of resilience, so going from the readiness of infrastructure down to the response of any cases like COVID now, and then down to recovery of that infrastructure. Do you see simulation still playing an important role in the future on that whole kind of life cycle of resilience of the buildings?
Definitely so, and even more so than it is at the moment, where we're using it more as a design tool for future stations or station upgrades. I think there's going to be a lot more focus on getting the most out of assets to make them more resilient. I think the assets that we've got today are going to be the assets that we have in 50 years' time, and reworking them and reimagining them to meet future needs is very important.
Great. And I believe in the beginning of the presentation also, Cameron mentioned a little bit about Atkins and SNC level, and how you guys divide some of the activities between the different teams. So one of the questions is, how are you guys working remotely at the moment, and how do you collaborate with other teams inside of the company, and of course within your own team, as well as we go through quarantine and through all the lockdown measures?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
we've been
this
at
is
home. Sorry,
sorry.
Kerry, I'll just start things off. So we've been at home now. It feels like forever, but it's been since probably the middle of March or thereabouts. It's long enough for me, I can tell you. But in terms of how we've been collaborating, I think like a lot of people, we've surprised ourselves as to how well we've been able to collaborate and how well the IT systems have held up under the strain of remote working. of course, there are challenges with running big pedestrian models, and I'll let Carrie and Simon explain some of those challenges in terms of what we needed to do to address those. But we found also that during this process that our collaboration with other parts of the business has probably improved. Because there's been this coming together of minds around COVID-19 and our response to the pandemic, and that has resulted in a number of forums across all the sectors, meaning that, of course, in Australia we need to stay up very late at night to meet all the time zones required. But apart from that's been a really good experience. But just getting to know some of the colleagues in the Middle East and in the UK that perhaps I don't know so well. So on that side of things, it's been a positive.
Yes, myself is very much agree with what Cameron said. In terms of collaboration, I actually feel like the pandemic bring us all together and become closer. So we start ignoring the different like geographically distance among each other, and now we start talking more using different type of communication softwares, and we're working more together as a team. And then we might start talking to people we even didn't think about to reach to previously, and then we share thoughts and ideas together and trying to bring like multi international capabilities together to bring some changes and deliver some innovative ideas to the clients. So yeah, I very much agree with Cameron on that point. And in terms of our work, working from home definitely requires some disciplines. And also the internet sometimes could really bring you down, as Legion itself now is a cloud-based software, and also all our existing or past projects are all saved in our company server. So sometimes just trying to load old projects or just trying to get a Legion to work could really rely on the internet bandwidth. And as everyone working from home, that could be challenging sometimes. But other than that, myself is actually quite enjoying working from home now. And Simon?
I don't really have a great deal extra to add on that stage, on that question, other than I think collaboration within the company has gone just to a whole new level from where it was previously. We were great at collaborating before, but now it's just gone just way above. I think many companies will be asking, why weren't we doing this all along? It took a COVID situation to get us there, but yeah, it's a great situation to be in with regards to global collaboration.
Great. So just if I can ask a follow-up question on that one as well. One of the plans that we have for Legion, of course, is integrating it with our BIM design platform, so OpenBuildings. So I guess the question is also, how do you see that moving forward? Do you believe there is an advantage in working closer to not only architects, but also engineers? In the case of the whole BIM lifecycle of a project, we are talking about all the different engineering capabilities. So all the way from mechanical to electrical, structural, and all the different kind of components of a building. Do you believe there is value in actually bringing simulation to a very early stage of a project and actually being very close to that life cycle?
Let me just start, Eduardo, and I'll let the others follow. BIM is something that has been coming for a long time, and it's had its ups and downs and along the journey, but it's always been coming, and its arrival is inevitable. So I think that's the way we're going in any case. But I think it's the right way. And to your point, one of the things that always held us back really is wanting to inform designs from an early time in the cycle, in the design cycle, was that the modelling was a bit too cumbersome to enable us to do that. So anything that enables us to run models earlier in that process, the better we can inform designs, and the more, frankly, that the architects will respond to our urgings, because I think we're very architect friendly and we like working with architects, but sometimes it takes some modelling output for get them thinking about a problem. So as I say, the earlier we can do that in the design process, the better.
Yes, I very much agree with what Cameron said there. And then I think bringing bringing Legion or getting more closer or combining everything together in Beam platform is great as everyone's share in the same platform. But I guess my question will be, or maybe this pandemic time is a test to it. That is, um, being Beam is very much cloud-based, or if you want to work collaboratively, it's cloud-based. So it's really a test to the bandwidth. And then it's how, like say, the office system or everyone's home internet can hold on to it. Because currently, some communications that I've been receiving from like architects team or from the engineering team is that they couldn't really work together on the cloud-based due to the internet limitation. So maybe thinking about bringing something light to the market could be a direction. But yes, definitely a big fan of integrating Legion with Bing.
Yes, I look forward to the days where at the moment we don't have to take BIM drawings, convert them into 2D, clean them up, and then build the model. If we can speed that process up where we can have the BIM model and then directly run either straight in the software, run the pedestrian modeling simulation, or it's just it takes the model and does all the cleaning, and then you start building from there. It would save a lot of time. That doesn't really add to the overall output and analysis.
Great. Well, thank you very much, guys, for the presentation and, of course, answering all the questions. Very, very nice. And looking forward to chatting to you all soon.